Follow Famous and Gravy on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to Famous and Gravy early and ad-free now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Introducing Instagram teen accounts. A new way to keep your teen safer as they grow. Like making sure they always have their seatbelt on.
All right, sweetie pie, buckle up. Good job.
Or ring the bell on their bike.
Okay, kid, give it a try. Nice.
Or remember their elbow pads.
Knees too, okay? Yep. There you go.
New Instagram teen accounts. Automatic protections for who can contact your teen and the content they can see.
Thank you to our partner, Mentos Gum. You ever feel like you're just going through the same motions day after day? We've all been there. Staring at brake lights, in traffic, or stuck in a long meeting. Not anymore with Mentos Gum. Listen up. This isn't just your regular gum. We're talking about a whole vibe refresh. Think of it as your personal reset button. One piece, and suddenly that traffic jam becomes your private concert venue. That meeting that should have been an email, it turns into a full-on fiesta. From flavors like fresh mint to bold strawberry, Mentos Gum transforms ordinary moments into fresh possibilities. Whether you want to switch up your route home or keep your mind fresh in a meeting. Refresh the everyday with Mentos Gum. Yes to fresh with Mentos Gum.
This is Famous and Gravy, biographies from a different point of view. To participate in our opening quiz, email us at hello@famousandgravy.com. Now here's the quiz to reveal today's dead celebrity.
This person died 2003, age 74. He was an ordained Presbyterian minister.
A famous ordained Presbyterian. Okay, give me more.
The fellow who was in the United States, Ross Perot. Is he dead?
Not Ross Perot. Good guess. We actually did an episode on Ross Perot, but that was before we were taking ourselves seriously as a show. But it's not bad. He once volunteered at a state prison in Pittsburgh and helped set up a playroom for children visiting their parents.
Celebrity prison, I go to Johnny Cash, but that can't be it.
Was he like an advisor to presidents kind of guy?
Not an advisor to presidents kind of guy. Eddie Murphy parodied him on Saturday Night Live.
I'm stumped.
Not a clue.
One of his sweaters hangs in the Smithsonian.
Eddie Murphy, sweater in the Smithsonian. I got nothing. That's not nothing. It's just one of those days.
He composed his own songs for his show and began each episode in a set made to look like a comfortable living room singing, "It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood."
Wait a second.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I got it. Fred Rogers.
Mr. Rogers?
Oh, it's Mr. Rogers.
Today's dead celebrity is Fred Rogers.
Wow, that's a good one.
Just 1 minute to think of those who have made a real difference in your life. Who's made a difference in your life?
Oh, a lot of people. But a lot of people who have allowed me to have some silence. And I don't think we give that gift very much anymore. I'm very concerned that our society is much more interested in information than wonder, in noise rather than silence. How do we encourage reflection? Oh my, this is a noisy world.
Welcome to Famous and Gravy. I'm Michael Osborne.
And my name is Jennifer Keishin Armstrong.
And on this show, we choose a famous figure who died in the 21st century and we take a totally different approach to their biography. What didn't we know? What could we not see clearly? And what does a celebrity's life story teach us about ourselves? Today, Fred Rogers, died 2003, age 74. Okay, so I am thrilled today to be joined by a friend of the show, Jennifer Keishin Armstrong. She's a New York Times bestselling author and pop culture historian. Jennifer helped out with our Carrie Fisher episode, and I have lost track of how many books you've written.
I'm currently working on my 9th book, which is about the television show Parks and Recreation.
Amazing. Well, and I know one of the other things you're up to these days is you've launched and are helping to contribute to this Ministry of Pop Culture Substack.
Absolutely. It's me and 4 other pop culture authors specifically. We all write similar kinds of books. And we also share something with your show in that our big thing is just for us, it's really about making meaning of the pop culture we love, whether it's old or new or in between.
I really like that you spoke to meaning here because like pop culture is often a gateway to a deeper conversation. So you and I got on the horn not too long ago and we started brainstorming and I threw out the name Fred Rogers. You had a very strong response to it. And because you also wrote an article about kind of like the Buddhism of Fred Rogers.
Exactly.
Do you call yourself a Buddhist?
I do. I'm a practicing Buddhist. I'm a student with the Village Zendo in New York City and New Paltz Zen Center here in my hometown of New Paltz. I'm very involved with it and have been a student for about 15 years now.
Fabulous. All right, let's get right to it. Category 1, grading the first line of their obituary. Fred Rogers, who gently invited millions of children to be his neighbor as host of the public television show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for more than 30 years, died of cancer early Thursday. He was 74. Jennifer, your initial reaction?
I like it. This man was pretty singular. We're going to talk about some of the corners of his life that maybe people didn't know as much about, but he was who he was. There wasn't a lot hidden. And this has got to be one of the easiest obit first lines to write because you aren't like, oh crap, what about his turn as a villain on the, whatever. Like,
right. Or some hidden scandal or something like that. Right.
Yeah. There's no big complications. And so I'm not really mad at this. I would say the one piece of finesse here might be gently.
Well, that was what I honed in on. And I think I have more gripes than you do here. I had the reaction of understatement. There's a lot going on under the surface in terms of values, but that actually is my number one gripe here. This doesn't capture his values at all. And I know that's not easy, but kindness or compassion or generosity, service. I mean, there's like all we get in terms of emotion or adjective is exactly what you pointed to, gently. Gently is a nice word, and it's definitely an accurate word, but I wanted more here. This doesn't quite capture impact or stature. So on one hand, I'm sort of like okay with understatement, but I had the same reaction you did. Like at first I'm like, I like it. It's simple. Why make this complex? But then I'm like, no, bullshit. I do think it was sudden, his death, because he was diagnosed with cancer and then like 2 months later, boom. But it's interesting how durable he is as a pop culture figure, that he died in, 2003?
Yes.
He's become more impactful over time. They could not have known that when this was written in 2003, but still, even the contribution to PBS, the congressional testimony, there was a bigger figure here than what this obit captures for me. So it's missing values and it's missing stature.
I agree. And also I have a bone to pick throughout reading about him, to be honest, which is captured here, which is just the way they're always saying like the preschool show. Yes, of course it was for children. I'm not saying like I was going to spend my adulthood like rewatching Mr. Rogers.
Right.
But we could all do worse. And I think you're totally right. I was also giving them a lot of leeway. I kept saying to myself, this is like how I think as a journalist, is that I kept saying, you know what? There is a Rogers Sans. If I may, probably I may not. There was a Mr. Rogers re-evaluation not that long ago.
Yeah, there's a documentary in the Tom Hanks movie.
Yeah, that really re-evaluated him for all of us into this other figure that's so much bigger. And I think maybe we didn't even appreciate that, like, he's such a Gen X and beyond person.
Figure. Yes, I agree.
We had to grow up in order to like
before we realized what he did.
Yeah, like holy crap. But
yeah,
I was going 8. I might drop it down now to like a 7.
Yeah, I was going 7 and I think I'm going to go 6. There is a part of me that it wants the New York Times to anticipate somebody's durability and the way their shadow may hang in the popular consciousness for a while.
Well,
you know what I mean?
And I have a whole thing about the use of the word icon. But if there is anyone, and I would say we had to know this in 2003, if there was anyone who's iconic, like this man made this image that means something without saying anything anymore. The sweater is like it.
Yes.
You could see just the man in that sweater and it would just bring comfort to millions of people. He invented something that didn't exist before. So I would say, now I'm like, this is a 1.
All right. Let's freeze frame it at 6 and a 7, because I think that's about fair, because I'll talk myself back up if we keep going.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on. Category 2, 5 things I love about you. Here, Jennifer and I will develop a list of 5 things that offer a different angle on who this person was and how they lived. I'm going to let you lead. What do you have here for 5 things?
I said positive masculinity.
Okay. All right. I like it. Let's do this.
Right? Like, to me, that's what this more recent reevaluation was getting at. He's the father figure we sort of all need, wish we had. I don't want to say wish our dads could be, but, kind of. Like, he was so bravely vulnerable, among other things, and so uniquely him. He did not care about seeming like some big guy. And for a man of his generation in particular, that is extraordinary. This was really, I think, shown in that famous Tom Junod piece for Esquire.
Yeah. This is the 1999 profile. He's kind of like a tough guy, go get him journalist.
That's right.
He has this like 180, is humbled and kind of like falls in love with Fred Rogers.
That's right. And the headline on it is something like, "Can you say hero?" I
want to really respond to this because I love that you led with this, first of all. I'd say this is kind of one of the ongoing workshopping themes of Famous and Gravy, is reevaluating masculinity and what does it mean? That's a question that's at the forefront of culture right now, and it's at the forefront of our show in some ways. I'll say, because I wrestled with this, and I still wrestle with this. I grew up in a hyper-masculine kind of football culture in Texas where there's like a certain kind of machismo that is very present. And I was a sensitive kid. And in a way, Fred Rogers was somebody who I, on some level, found threatening as a child. I wouldn't have called myself a Fred Rogers fan growing up because I would have been afraid of the associations that would have come with that. And so to hear you talk about positive masculinity, you said vulnerability. What is positive masculinity?
I know I've been having these conversations for a while, mainly in the television space.
Yeah. I
mean, Ted Lasso is the quintessential example of this. Like, they've put him in a sports milieu, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's a coach. He's Southern. He's from Kansas. He has kind of like that twang.
Yeah, he's got a Southern accent.
He's dead Midwest, right?
Yeah.
He's heterosexual, which is just important in messaging more than anything. And he turns out to be this strong coach with this sort of ability to like really hone in on feelings, pay attention to individual people and their specialness. He has a lot of Fred Rogers. It's like if Fred Rogers coached a soccer team.
Okay, let me give you my second. And actually, this is going to segue pretty well. I'm going to start with Tiger and the Tall Grass. The tiger thing, it was a reference to Daniel Tiger. What I'm really after with Tiger and the Tall Grass is his hidden power. He is a kind of contradiction in that he seems to be, like, at first glance, frail or weak or gentle, right? He actually commands space. And he does it with his voice. He does it with his presence. He does it with his attention. You know, one thing that comes out in the research in the documentaries is like you underestimate his power. And this is sort of gets into the Buddhist thing a little bit. It exists because of his mindfulness, his awareness of spaciousness. And, you know, there's this moment in an interview with Charlie Rose where he talks about his favorite part of his book is the white space in between the text. Like a paragraph break was meant for you to sit with an idea.
It's about what in the end?
It's about being. It's about the white spaces between the paragraphs, which I think are more important than any of the text, because it allows you to think about what's just been said. I had a professor one time, and he said, "You know, Fred, there's one thing that evil cannot stand, and that is forgiveness." And you notice the rest of the page is blank.
Yes.
It needs a lot of time to think about that.
And that felt like such an embodiment of what he does. He creates space. It's an expression of power, but you don't necessarily look at Fred Rogers and think, oh, that's a powerful guy. You know, and I wanted a little bit of a metaphor. So Tiger in the Tall Grass.
Something that really will strike you if you revisit him as an adult is, I mean, one of the famous things, besides the Tom Junod story, is his congressional testimony. And to get funding for public television.
Yeah, we need to set this up a little bit, right? Because this is this iconic moment where PBS and the future of public broadcasting is on the line. Lyndon Johnson had authorized some money. Nixon was on the fence about it. There's a powerful senator who's very skeptical. And Fred Rogers gives this 6-minute testimony or something.
Yes, it's incredible to watch. You cannot believe it's real. And they chose him knowing his personal power.
I'm constantly concerned about what our children are seeing. And for 15 years, I have tried in this country and Canada to present what I feel is a meaningful expression of care. I think that it's much more dramatic that two men could be working out their feelings of anger than showing something of gunfire.
I'm supposed to be a pretty tough guy, and this is the first time I've had goosebumps for the last 2 days.
Well, I'm grateful not only for your goosebumps, but for your interest in our kind of communication.
I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
That you watch this man go from this like smirky thing to being like, huh. And that shows you that's a man. He went in there.
Tiger in the tall grass.
Yeah.
And positive masculinity. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, why don't you go with number 3?
Okay. I just wrote down Just the Way You Are.
Okay, somebody had to say it.
Because
yeah, I have radical acceptance.
Yeah.
Just the Way You Are. Say more.
It's just, I mean, this, if there's anything, I mean, besides there's the presence, there's the silence, but this was his ultimate power as the TV host, you know, doing his job.
I think it's his ultimate mission.
Yeah.
I think if there is one thing he cares about in this world, if he had to distill it all down, it is start from a place of self-acceptance.
Yes.
I love you just the way you are. You need to learn to love yourself just the way you are. We need to accept that we're all special. And it's such a principle rooted in his Christianity and his view of humanity. And it's like the thing he cares most about. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, do you remember that song, You Are Special? I mean, I can't even sing most of it. I just remember you are special, you know, and it's so, it just hits you because when you're a kid, I mean, any of us, to be honest, like we all keep wanting to hear this, right? It's
do you not have to overcome a certain sense of corniness though with him?
Oh, for sure. But he's
right. Okay.
This is the kid part, right? He's talking to kids.
I have to remind myself of that, right? Because it's very easy to get, I don't know. I think it is like kind of the central question, actually, in a way, of the positive masculinity thing. Why do I feel threatened by somebody who is willing to be very corny and to talk to, chill? Because it's all about vulnerability. There's a part of me that's like, I realize that by being threatened by that, that's a question for me, not him.
But I do want to say, I mean, it's interesting that you said that because like at first I was thinking, oh, how strange that you feel that way. But I actually don't think that's strange at all because I love you just the way you are. But also because,
thanks.
Because I think I feel it too. And I mean, I don't really realize it. And I don't know if you watched the scripted film, I think it did something smart in that it's exploring the way probably most of us would feel hanging out with Fred Rogers, which is like kind of a little like, dude, take it down a notch.
Totally.
Like you don't have to do your thing right now, but apparently it seems like he's always doing his thing.
Well, that comes out in the research too, that what you see on the TV show is the man. Everybody hammers that point. If you have some illusion in your mind that Fred Rogers on TV is the alter ego of some very different character, obviously we're all more complex off the camera, but basically the guy you see is the guy he is.
Yeah, he's Fred Rogersing people all the time, including Tom Junod when he did the piece, which was the part that they took for this movie.
He had this amazing ability to look into people and see past the adult facade that we present and take a really direct look at the, aching kid that's within all of us and to decide what that kid needed. And he decided what I needed was trust. And there were people, and I know this in retrospect, but there were people who worked for him who just thought he was crazy.
And I think it would be incredibly illuminating and also very upsetting or very vulnerable if he was like there with you talking to you, because he would do his thing right at you and he would see you exactly for who you are.
Yeah,
and that feels creepy.
I'm threatening. I'm threatened just imagining it. Yeah,
it is upsetting. Yeah. It's upsetting to think about. And so it's very interesting how radical this is. And I do want to say, like, part of the reason that I wrote down Just the Way You Are is I have this memory of going to see Mr. Rogers live. He would go do like a little stage appearance where he talked directly to kids live. And my mom and I took my younger sibling. I was already like old, I was already like, I had to be tween. When we took Scotty lost, my sibling is trans. And so Scotty just like lost her shit because she swore, I think he like kind of peeked out of the curtain a little, and she swore that he waved at her, directly at her. And like, she just freaking like could not get over it. And I always took her love of Fred Rogers as this whole, just the way you are special. Like, she felt so seen by, I'm like getting choked up. She felt so seen by him and, was unique in so many ways. Yeah. And I think really extra appreciated. I think always felt like an outsider in a number of ways. And I think throughout her life, like, she kept talking about that. Like, that she would always say how much, even when she was older and it wasn't cool, she'd be like, I love Mr. Rogers, So there's clearly something there.
That's a great one, Jennifer. I'm glad you pointed it out. Okay, let me take number 4. Social emotional pioneer. I think that this gets a little bit into the chronology of his life. So he came from a very well-to-do family, and he was overweight when he was younger. He was bullied, and he then has a kind of sounded like normal-ish high school experience. Goes to Dartmouth for a year, can't stand it because it's a total party school. It's like frat boys getting drunk all the time. And then he goes to school for music. I feel like when I think of him through the lens of social emotional pioneer, there's sort of two things that come out for me. One is it's in contrast to Sesame Street. I feel like the Fred Rogers Sesame Street tension is really interesting because I'd never thought of this before, that Sesame Street is the kind of cognitive learning show where presenting with numbers and facts and the alphabet. And Fred Rogers is about feelings and how we handle our feelings and how we know and come to understand our feelings. So he's a total social emotional pioneer that way. But the other piece of it to me is creative outlet. That I feel like one thing I had a hard time understanding of, like, okay, how did you get to this place where you understood the needs of young kids such that you could speak to that audience and help them learn how they deal with their emotions? I think, broadly speaking, his answer to that is through creativity. It's why he's into puppets. It's why he's into music. It's why make-believe and play overall that, and I've really been thinking about this with my kids who I'm working with to try to help them with their emotions. Their creative outlets and giving them creative outlets is part of the process. So he was ahead of the game in terms of putting social and emotional learning front and center. But I also, I wanted to sort of stamp that with a kind of creative outlet emphasis, because I feel like that is very much part of his mission.
Absolutely. And it's just reminding me too that the other part of that is he has this wonderful song about what to do with your feelings. It's something about when you feel so mad you could bite. I mean, I'm reading it every day in my life in terms of how do I deal with anxiety? And they'll tell you, punch a pillow. The scientific or whatever you want to say term is called completing the cycle. It's because your feelings come up and you have to put them somewhere because you can't run from the tiger. So he kind of encourages kids to scream or, don't bite people, that you can punch something.
It's got to come out. It's got to express. Yeah.
And that's actually huge. If all of us did that more, we'd have a better world.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, why don't you take number 5 here?
Okay. I don't have a pithy way of saying this, but he is a television pioneer. And I have to say this as the TV historian here.
Yeah.
Whenever you're trying to understand TV history, you have to put yourself in the brain space of the time when something happened. Well, this is a time when there was so much anxiety about television and what it was going to do to kids' brains. And you're talking
the 1960s, which is a tumultuous time.
And this, I would say, he is subtly dealing, like looking around himself and saying, like, how are kids taking this in?
Yeah.
People, people are, figures are constantly getting assassinated. We're going to war in Vietnam. No one knows why. Everyone's
and he dealt with that overtly on the show. I mean, after Robert Kennedy was killed, there's a segment about assassination. During school integration, there's that wonderful moment. Yeah, you should set this one up with
Officer Clemens, who is Black, and he does this apparently kind of radical thing, which is just that they put their feet in a little kiddie pool together.
Yeah, they're sharing a swimming pool.
Oh, there's Officer Clemens. Hi, Officer Clemens. Come in.
Rogers, how are you?
Fine. Won't you sit down?
Oh, sure. Just for a moment.
It's so warm. I was just putting some water on my feet.
Oh, it sure is.
Would you like to join me?
It looks awfully enjoyable, but I don't have a towel or anything.
Oh, you share mine.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh,
Come along.
man.
I'll put some more water in here.
Oh. This is going to turn into a beautiful day.
I think this is also a time when most people did not recognize, they recognized the power of television, but they recognized it only in the sense that they were freaking out. What is television going to do to children?
Yes.
But he saw, okay, we can't do anything. Kids are going to watch television. We can't stop it at this point. So what can I do to use that power for good? And the reason him and Sesame Street go together in a way is they're concurrent. And they're also both coming to the same conclusion with slightly different responses. And they saw it as, oh my God, we see kids singing commercial jingles. What if they were singing the alphabet instead?
Yeah.
And he saw it as, I can connect directly with that crazy thing I do with my eyes, where I look right in the camera, which is very hard to do, by the way. Very few people can do it. Who could do it? Betty White. So that's telling, I think.
Okay, let's recap. So, number 1, you said positive masculinity. Number 2, I said tiger in the tall grass, hidden power. Number 3, you said just the way you are. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Number 4, I went with social emotional pioneer, especially as it relates to creative outlets. And number 5, you said television pioneer.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome list.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pause for some advertisements.
So I just used NerdWallet's card finder tool to find a better card for me. And listeners, this is genius. All you have to do is answer a few questions, and in minutes, you'll get matched with recommendations tailored to you. I'm discovering cards I didn't even know existed, and the matching was on point. The best part? No research needed. The nerds already did that for us. So if you, like me, want to easily find the right card for you, go to nerdwallet.com to get matched today. Terms and conditions apply. Credit products subject to lender approval. See nerdwallet.com for details.
The stench of sweaty uniforms in a football team's locker room can be unbearable. But Arm & Hammer Deep Clean Laundry Detergents fights the toughest odors to deliver a championship-level clean. Arm & Hammer Deep Clean Detergents are the brand's most powerful formulas yet that can penetrate deep between fibers to tackle tough dirt and odors. Just like an elite defense, its pH Power technology sends in millions of ionic microscrubbers to dominate the toughest stains and odors. And unlike those premium tickets, with the trusted value of Arm & Hammer, you don't need deep pockets for a deep clean. Available in liquid or convenient power packs, it works in all machines and temperatures, even cold water. When it comes to tough stains and odors, put Arm & Hammer Deep Clean in your starting lineup. Pick up Arm & Hammer Deep Clean today. Available in-store or online at major retailers nationwide.
Okay, category 3, One Love. In this category, Jennifer and I will each choose one word or phrase that characterizes this person's loving relationships. First, we will review the family life data. All right, this one's pretty simple. There's one marriage to Sarah Joanne. Everybody called her Joanne. Fred was 23 when they got married. They were together for about 51 years until his death at age 74. They had 2 sons. It's interesting when he's asked about his upbringing, he'll say, I was an only child until age 11. And I think at age 11, his parents adopted a sister. And so he sort of feels the need to say, I was an only child for these formative years, I think tells you a lot about how he was shaped. He was also very sickly and frail. I mentioned earlier that he was overweight and that he spent a lot of time alone playing.
That's right. He had asthma, I believe.
Yeah, I think scarlet fever even, he mentioned it at one point. So, okay, I'm going to let you lead.
That's the main stuff. And I believe he had a rift with one of his sons for a little bit.
Yeah, there's not a lot of dirt. His sons, have a rebellious period.
That's right.
And I heard one story that they were living in a very large house in Pittsburgh, and he discovered lamps with pot growing in the basement and kind of flipped out, which I gotta say endeared me to his sons, right? Like, I was kind of like, oh, that's great. And he did have a reaction of like, this would hurt me as a public figure, right? He was not a guy who lost his temper. But his wife would sometimes, if anybody was going to yell, she had a little bit more of the disciplinary in him, although he obviously believes in discipline as well. So where'd you land, word or phrase? Did you come up with something?
I actually said ordinary.
I was so going to go, okay, that's a good segue.
Yeah, and it's so, I feel like we would know. And granted, things are maybe different now than they were then, but something that I've always found that comes up is like, you're going to hear about it if someone is inconsistent with their image. It's like, we all are fine with Charlie Sheen being terrible because we knew he was terrible. Right. Whereas like Tiger Woods, we would know, is my point. If there was some absolute crazy thing. And wouldn't you rebel too if you were his sons?
Of course. And one of them even talks about like, it's not easy to be this, son of the second coming of Christ, right?
That's got to be so annoying. And like, imagine being like 16.
I would absolutely do drugs, lots of them. There's only one. There's only one.
Pot seems reasonable.
100%. So, okay, I love that you said ordinary. I went that direction too. How I got here, I feel a little conflicted about, but I was like, are there any good metaphors for androgyny? Because I heard the word androgynous come up a few times with Fred Rogers, which I don't know if that's an accurate word or not, but here's what ChatGPT encouraged me to think about was the moon and moonlight. So I went down a bit of a rabbit hole for common moonlight metaphors. Here's what I've got. Softness and calmness. Moonlight is often used to evoke a sense of tranquility and serenity, as its light is gentle and diffused, unlike the harshness of sunlight. Beauty and reflection. Just as the moon reflects the sun's light, moonlight can symbolize the beauty that can be found in reflection, or the way something can reflect the brilliance of something else. Change and cyclicity. The moon's phases from new moon to full moon and back again are a constant reminder of the cycle of nature of life. Hidden potential. Moonlight can be used to represent the hidden beauty or potential that can be found in darkness, or the ability to find light even in the darkest of times. Intuition. In some cultures and literary contexts, the moon and moonlight are associated with intuition and the subconscious, which sort of gets at the child development thing. And then finally, hope and guidance. The moon's ability to illuminate the night sky can also be used to represent hope and guidance, especially in times of darkness or uncertainty. As I was reading this, I'm like, dude, check. All right.
I mean,
seriously. Well, I want you to right, exactly. The interpersonal life, as much as we know, is exactly to your point, ordinary. It does seem like he is practicing these principles in all his affairs. It sounded like he struggled with his teenage sons, who doesn't, right? And it also sounds like there's still love and family values are centered, and that's not BS, and that's the point. So, yeah, Moonlight. I thought you might enjoy that.
That's
Isn't that
beautiful.
Pretty good? Isn't that good? Yeah.
I mean, you just made me think too, because especially I know you guys always kind of like to bring these things back to like how we're all living our lives. And the constancy, all of that, I suddenly had this insight of like, well, he was married to this woman for 51 years, okay? Like, that's a choice. You and I both know that the longer my relationship goes on, the more that like when someone's like, these people have been married 40 years, I'm like, oh my God, yes. Congratulations. I used to be like, why are people like
Do they still like each other? That's the other important question. Like, just to be married isn't the only thing. But
and that's true. That's absolutely true. I felt like they were a team from what I saw.
There is a lot out there, though, about how, like, and I don't know if we want to talk about this or not, but it feels sort of important. The word gay.
Yes.
Right?
I was like, are we going to talk about this?
I kind of think we need to.
This has been a conversation, which may be why I feel okay kind of addressing it. I mean, there's an actual section on his Wikipedia.
Right. And whenever that exists on Wikipedia, it means the kind of popular conversation has crossed a certain...
Something has happened. And so his biographer often kind of, and I don't know how I feel about this, but there was a authoritative biography written.
Yes, I read this.
And that man often will sort of speak for Fred at this point, but he's been asked many times, isn't he gay? Because of his sort of softness. And I'm certain that he was faithful to his wife. I don't think he had sex with men. But there's this one thing where, first of all, he's very gay friendly, which I love. Officer Clemens was a gay man. There's a little like
tension about how out he was and what that could mean for the show. But that you have to place in the context, obviously.
Clemens said he accepted me when my gay friends came to the set. He was very accepting, so very consistent in that way. And apparently once had a conversation with a gay friend where he said he was sort of in the middle of the sexual spectrum.
Yeah, that comment that gets a lot of attention and that gets twisted, perhaps.
That's
right? Because one, we don't have context for it, but two, I don't know, so what? Anyway, I don't know.
Who cares who he was attracted to? On the other hand, some queer people have sort of happily grabbed onto that and said, Fred Rogers, queer icon.
Yeah, that's the thing is I don't think there's actually anything that interesting to say other than those who want to claim his symbolic power. There's really not much of a sexual valence here other than on the point of acceptance.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and I think if you want to say he's a queer icon, that's where he's a queer icon.
And that's exactly right. Okay, Ordinary and Moonlight, good words. Category 4, net worth. In this category, Jennifer and I have each written down our numbers ahead of time. We're going to talk a little bit about our reasoning, and then we're going to look up the net worth number in real time to see who's closest. Finally, we will place this person on the Famous and Gravy net worth leaderboard. I'm sure you and I found the same thing. Came from a well-to-do family, was absolutely non-materialistic and not about money, but the well-to-do family, it's not just like a little bit well-to-do, it's very well-to-do. He's mostly the product of generational wealth in a sense, which is at the same time, I mean, this guy is the face of public broadcasting. He's opting for simplicity. So that's all I thought about. I didn't even think about comps. Did you have anything else to add in terms of how you thought about this question?
Not really. I just thought it can't be that much.
Yeah.
It's not Sesame Street if we keep going back to that other thing that happened.
Well, some of the Muppets are sold in toy stores. Daniel Tiger, the puppet, is not. And he stayed away from that. I mean, he policed the hell out of commercial interest and had a notoriously strong stance against advertising towards children overall. I mean, he's about as dogmatic as anybody's ever been about that. All right, let's go ahead and reveal our numbers. So Jennifer Keishin Armstrong wrote down to $5 million.
Michael Osborne wrote down $12 million.
Okay, the actual net worth of Fred Rogers is $3 million.
Whoa! That's so low.
That's so low. Oh good. I'm so glad. This is going to place him easily in the bottom quartile.
That's not anything.
All right, let's place him on the Famous and Gravy net worth leaderboard. I kind of love this company. So this puts him easily in the bottom 10%. In a three-way tie with Jerry Jeff Walker, Burt Reynolds, and Norm Macdonald. Burt and Norm famously squandered away their fortunes. Norm through a gambling problem, Burt through a complete mismanagement of money. Jerry Jeff Walker is a reasonably obscure figure. That's the Fred Rogers Company. Oh my God, do I love this. Okay, Fred Rogers, $3 million.
That's
well done, Fred.
In the grand, we would all take $3 million, but in the grand scheme
of things. One thing I've really come to like about the Famous and Gravy net worth leaderboard is the kind of imagining the dinner table conversation,
Yes, I love seeing the who's near each other.
Burt Reynolds and Fred Rogers and Jerry Jeff Walker.
They're way over on the poor side of the table. They're just
they're at the kids' table. Totally.
Burt.
Absolutely at the kids' table.
I so want that conversation.
Right? Oh my God. Okay, we might have to build another segment around that. All right, wonderful. $3 million. Well done, Fred Rogers. Let's move on. Category 5. Little Lebowski Urban Achievers.
They're the Little Lebowski Urban Achievers.
The Achievers.
Yes, and proud we are of all of them.
In this category, Jennifer and I will each choose a trophy, an award, a cameo, an impersonation, or some other form of a hat tip that shows a different side of this person. I'd love to hear what you've got here.
I just thought, I wasn't very creative. I just felt like we have to talk about Eddie Murphy.
I almost went there, yes. And this was, I think I might have been exposed to Eddie Murphy before I was exposed to Fred Rogers as a child. I had an older brother. What can I say?
Yeah. Do you remember what you thought of it?
At the time, I thought it was the most hilarious thing in the world. But Eddie Murphy was my hero from age, 4 to 14 or so. Yeah. But I also, I had the Best of Eddie Murphy Saturday Night Live tape that I would watch over and over and over again. I mean, there's something about the Eddie Murphy impersonation. It is the one that kind of gets brought up the most.
I think so. And
why is that? Do you have a theory on that?
I think it's obvious, but I'll say it anyway, which is just in a way, it's as much about Eddie Murphy as it is about Mr. Rogers, right? But there's something fun about juxtaposing those two people. Like, I just recently rewatched his famous segment, White Like Me, where he goes undercover as a white man.
I'm buying this newspaper. I love it.
And he does the white man voice that Dave Chappelle later just completely co-opts.
Totally.
But I think it's very similar. But in this case, he's not pretending to be white, right? So he's actually being him. Like, he's being a character that he would play. He's sort of like a black guy in the neighborhood.
Who could that be? Let's see. This is how you answer a door in my neighborhood. Who is it?
And the joke is, like, what would the Black urban version of this guy be? And it's kind of making fun more of like this concept of the super gentle.
Totally. I guess one thing to mention about this is there is a great story of, I think it's when Fred Rogers was going to do Letterman, he meets Eddie Murphy at, RCA? And Eddie Murphy comes out and like hugs him. It's like the real Mr. Rogers. And there's a Polaroid of the two of them. I think he got the joke on some level. You know?
Sure. I don't think he would have been upset by it at all. I'm sure he would have thought it was funny.
I'm glad he brought it up. I almost went that direction. Ultimately, I wanted something funny. The one that gets me is an SCTV skit where it's Julia Child and Fred Rogers in a boxing match. And Julia Child is played by John Candy and Fred Rogers is played by Martin Short. Martin Short as Fred Rogers really kind of works. There is this sort of frailness there. Martin Short, he doesn't have to do anything to make me laugh. And John Candy as Julia Child is actually quite charming. And they're in a boxing rink with gloves on, duking it out, like bobbing and weaving. And it doesn't show me a different side, but it is objectively funny. I don't know if it's mean-spirited, but it's definitely funny.
Rogers is chasing her around the ring. She's running in terror. This is really disgusting. This is not the sort of fare we're used to bringing. I certainly hope the young fans of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood aren't staying up to watch this bloody travesty.
Battle of the PBS Stars is extremely funny. You have to admit.
The trainer like squirts some water in John Candy's, oh, thank you. It's really fun. It's really good. Okay, let's take another break.
You sign up for something, forget about it after the trial period ends, then you're charged month after month after month. The subscriptions are there, but you're not using them. In fact, 85% of people have at least one paid subscription going unused each month. Thanks to Rocket Money, you can see all your subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones you're not using anymore. Now, boom, you're saving more money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/Wondery today. That's rocketmoney.com/Wondery. rocketmoney.com/Wondery.
It's time to transform your healthcare experience with Amazon One Medical Pay-Per-Visit. Perhaps you're dealing with hair loss or looking to clear your skin. One Medical PPV offers upfront, affordable healthcare available 24/7. Easily access treatments for common concerns like ED, hair loss, and prescription solutions for beauty and skincare. With One Medical PPV, you can quickly connect with a provider right from home. No insurance necessary, just one flat fee per visit. Plus, you'll receive transparent pricing and fast free medication delivery through Amazon Pharmacy. Head to www.amazon.com/OMPPV to learn more. That's amazon.com/OMPPV. A provider determines eligibility. Prices may vary.
Category 6, words to live by. In this category, we each choose a quote. These are either words that came out of this person's mouth or was said about them. You kick us off here.
Okay. No one else can live the life you live. And even though no human being is perfect, we always have the chance to bring what's unique about us in a redeeming way. And I got this from one of his many, many commencement speeches.
Yeah.
It's certainly not his most famous quote. And I liked that this was him because I saw it and I was like, I actually didn't believe it was even him at first, the way it's phrased. And then I realized, oh, it's a commencement speech. So he's speaking to college kids. So he speaks a little more like a normal person.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Adult to adult. I liked it because it felt a little more like his stuff but for adults. I know it's just going back to like, you are special and all of this other stuff. But when you're going out into the world as a college kid graduating, you need to hear this so much.
It's interesting. I think it is so much more important to children establish a sense of value and self-worth. It is also hard, though, in a world of whatever we're at now, 8 billion plus people, to hold that idea true. That 8 billion is such an unfathomably large number that believing every human being is special and sacred and worthy of redemption, which is, I do believe that, actually holding that up and adhering to that is a whole other thing. And he embodies that more than anybody else. And I think that's what you're getting at here.
That's exactly right. And if I want to bring a little Buddhism into it,
please.
There's this idea in Buddhism where they say, do not spare the Dharma assets. And what they mean, so Dharma is like your stuff, like you were brought here with special things. And it's the whole only you can be you kind of thing. The idea is kind of like you were brought here with special stuff. You sort of owe it to the world to use your special stuff. Why be like everyone else? When you were given special things, you should use whatever it is that's special about you.
This is an idea that's also really present in 12-step work, that when you do inventory and you look at the harm you've caused in the past through your behavior, it is very important to account for both the deficits and assets. Like there are things you bring to the table. It is not an exercise in just beating yourself up and in self-loathing. And so I like that. That's what I hear in that Dharma assets idea.
It makes sense. Yeah. You have to be with it to bring those good qualities to the table. And
that's what redemption's about.
That's right. Yeah. And you can always turn it back around until you're dead.
Yeah.
So
that's it.
It's so funny how the older you get, the sort of more these cheesy quotes mean to you, actually.
Oh, yeah. No, I got a stack of flashcards.
Yeah. Like this one wasn't different from anything else he said, but I like that it was for young adults and we can all stand to be reminded of it.
Actually, and that's a pretty good segue into mine. So here's what I found that I liked. I don't think anyone can grow unless he's loved exactly as he is now, appreciated for what he is rather than what he will be. It's the second part of that I really like. That self-acceptance is not about future self necessarily. It's and I personally have a hard time letting go of that. I believe in, working on myself, but it is with an eye towards who I'm becoming, not who I am.
Right.
It's not anchored in the present. And I feel like that's the important part of this statement, appreciated for what he is rather than what he will be. I also, frankly, struggle with this with my children. I think a lot about, how are they growing up? Who are they becoming? Not who they are. And that's the thing that I think can be really hard for parents because development happens so fast. And I think it's the time component of it that is easily lost. It's not that I'm always going to love you. It's that this is where you at and who you are at right now is all you need to be and is perfect.
Yeah. That also is like, you could apply that to like marriage, relationship, you can apply that to
all relationships. Yes.
All relationships.
And most importantly, our relationship with ourselves. I mean, that's what this is all about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
Okay. Let's go to the next category. This one's, I think, going to be interesting. Man in the mirror. This category is fairly simple. Did this person like their reflection? Yes or no? This is not about beauty, but rather a question of self-confidence versus self-judgment. I'm going to read you what I wrote down. I wrote down in all caps, super interesting to think about, exclamation point. His main message, as you and I have been talking about this entire conversation, is about self-acceptance. Don't we kind of sort of think he's fighting to feel that himself? I think that he was bullied as a young kid. Yep. I think he was a frail figure. I think he was, a target who had to find his way to a certain sense of self-assuredness. My theory on him is he found that through music, through creativity, and then used that to build his television show as a platform to teach children the same idea. But whether he actually felt it in his heart, a sense of true self-acceptance, there's a part of me that has some doubt just because of what he's up against culturally and spiritually. I mean, so I am 100%. I could be talked into it either way. How do you think about this?
I think I'm going with he did.
You think you got there, that there's a kind of like acceptance?
I think so.
I mean, I do think you have to experience it to be able to communicate it. And he communicates it so effectively. And by teaching it, you reinforce that learning in yourself.
That's right. A day after day.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So that's where, I mean, if I had to make a call, that's where I'd go as well. But he didn't, like, he had to overcome to get there, right? That's the whole point.
For sure. I think he was definitely probably talking to his inner child, if you want to get into it, every 100%. Single damn day of his whole life.
Yes.
I mean, in a way, like, thank
point.
you, bullies, because they probably made this man.
Yeah.
They made this man's life work, so you can't discount the fact that essentially, in a way, the fact that this is his life work makes you think like, whoa, that had an effect. But
exactly.
on the other hand, I just think of two things. One of them is the congressional testimony. Mm-hmm. And one of them is this extraordinary scene that Tom Junod paints in his piece for Esquire, which is where Rogers wins a Daytime Emmy. And he goes to the Daytime Emmy Awards. You have to go read it because, like, I won't do it justice. And he does, like, he really writes the crap out of this.
But that moment is on the internet. I believe.
So there's this moment where he goes up to accept his Emmy. He basically says, let's have, I don't remember how many seconds.
10 seconds, I think. It's not that long.
10 seconds of silence.
All of us have special ones who have loved us into being. Would you just take, along with me, 10 seconds to think of the people who have helped you become who you are? 10 seconds of silence. I'll watch the time.
And there's kind of this weird, you know, you have to remember we've got a bunch of like soap stars and stuff in the audience, right? Everybody's glammed up.
Yeah.
All these people. And
they laugh initially.
This is Hollywood. And there is like a titter. They laugh because that's what everybody's primed to do at these weird shows. Then they realize, oh, he's dead serious. And they all do it. And then they all start crying. I mean, what an incredible thing. And that's why when I was thinking about the masculinity too, in a way, both of those cases, there's part of me that's like, hey, Mr. Rogers, like he is like, that is a man, like and you know what I mean by that. When I say real man, I don't mean like a jock man. I mean, like, this is a human being who can command a damn room.
Yeah, that's some Zen master shit right there. Right?
Yeah, it's just, you have to be so confident. He could have just gone up and been like, oh, it's so nice, thank you, blah, blah, you know.
No, I agree. And you've persuaded me. This man liked his reflection in the mirror. I think the important point is it was obviously a central part of his journey, and it was learned. And it was arrived at through spirituality, through connection, through education, and through creativity.
I agree. The spirituality cannot be discounted either, because I think this man believed what he believed.
Yeah, there's no question. And very broad base. While he was an ordained Presbyterian minister, he was more of a religious studies major than
That's
anything,
right. He studied everything, he said, throughout, because he didn't, like, for his show, he didn't want it to be a Christian show. He wanted it to be for kids who practiced any religion. And you can see it there. I mean, there's, like I said, there's so much Buddhism here, and I'm sure there's a bunch of Taoism and all kinds of other things too.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Next category, coffee, cocktail, cannabis. This is where we ask, which one would we most want to do with our dead celebrity? I'm going to use this as an opportunity to bring up Michael Keaton. I freaking love that Michael Keaton worked on the set, and like the set guys are rowdy and counterculture and long-haired and pranksters.
And I worked for Mr. Rogers' crew, which was a wild-ass crew.
It's a wild crew?
They were the greatest. These guys were the greatest. I mean, they just drip with, THC everywhere.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They just smelled like they just walked out of Tom Petty's house. Interesting guys. Everybody had hair down in the middle of their back. And
Except for Rogers.
Except for Fred.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful story about Michael Keaton pranking Mr. Rogers with, he put a sex doll in the closet where he gets his sweater. And apparently Mr. Rogers like laughed, takes the doll, dances around with it, and puts it back in the closet.
That's the perfect reaction.
There's all kinds of like stories like that of guys like messing with him in a very good humored way. So that led me to cannabis. I want a little bit of cannabis in the neighborhood of make-believe. So I am retired from drugs and alcohol, but many of my best memories with cannabis did inspire a sort of childlike quality of imagination around. And I don't know if I want to hear the puppet voices or not. I don't know if I can surrender all the corniness of it, but like this, in as much as I want to hang out with Fred Rogers, I think I want to be high in the neighborhood with puppets and maybe Michael Keaton lurking in the background, pulling off some pranks. And it's mostly, I mean, I think among other things, what does it mean to be in touch with your inner child? Part of it, to me, is to be in touch with your imagination. He's got that gift, and I think he can see somebody's inner child, and I would like for that to be nurtured in the land of make-believe. So where did you go with here? What did you do?
I felt like cannabis was so tempting. It's funny that neither of us even thought about cocktails, but especially since you went with the cannabis and have the perfect scenario for it. Yours might be the more selfless option, but I was thinking that I could have coffee with him and he could Fred Rogers me. And I think that would be so interesting.
What does that mean? What would it mean to be Fred Rogers?
I mean, I feel like so much of my idea of this comes from Tom Junod's experience with him and the way that, like, again, suddenly you're two adults, but he's still kind of like doing his thing. And he seems like he can look directly in your soul and be like, are you having a problem, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about it?
It does feel like he can beeline to emotions, right?
Yeah, I think it would be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, but I think
vulnerability is uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think it would be truly like a life-changing experience. I think this man looking into your soul for 5 minutes, I might be wildly overhyping him, but like, I would be willing to try.
He has that effect, and there's evidence of it, and it extends beyond the TV show, right? It extends in these little moments of accepting an Emmys award or testifying before Congress. He is carrying that quality with him everywhere he goes.
That's what I was thinking is like, I think he could probably just clock you so fast, like all of your bullshit, which probably people can do all the time. They just don't say it. But I think he could call a person on their bullshit so fast. And just for the chance of kind of, let's just go with probably the most heartfelt conversation you'd ever have. I do think this man, he's almost like an alien. Like that's the only way. I kept thinking that throughout doing the research. He's got this otherworldly quality. Like he came here from somewhere else to help us. I don't know anyone else who has this.
It does look like divine inspiration.
Right? He's plugged into something.
Yeah, like a universal spiritual principle on some level.
Yeah,
right?
he makes me also the reason that we were talking about the piece I wrote for Lion's Roar, the Buddhist magazine. The point was that we could see he has such Buddhist quality. He's a bodhisattva is what we would say. And that's what I see is there are probably other people like this, like the Dalai Lama or somebody. But that's what we're talking about. The level of plugged inness is akin to like Thich Nhat Hanh or the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty high level.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, I think we've arrived. Final category, the Vanderbeek, named after James Vanderbeek, who famously said in Varsity Blues,
I don't want your life.
In that Varsity Blues scene, James makes a judgment that he does not want a certain kind of life based on a single characteristic. So here, Jennifer and I will form a rebuttal to anyone skeptical of how Fred Rogers lived. So we always start with a counter argument. I'm struggling a little bit. I mean, he experienced some pain as a child.
Pretty normal amount,
or at least not unusual amount.
It's in the like
zone of like a lot of people experience a troubled childhood, maybe a little lonely or maybe very lonely. I don't want to dismiss that. I'd really have to push myself to kind of come up with a clever counter argument for why I would not want this life.
I mean, obviously there's things we probably don't know. We all suffer in one way or another, or we wouldn't be human. But yeah, this is like this guy, as we were just saying, if anyone was special, it was him.
So let's go right to it. Rather than sort of spending a lot of time talking about the reasons why we might not want this life, let's see if we can organize and prioritize why we would. We've talked a lot on Famous and Gravy about the idea of an upward staircase. This is very clearly an upward staircase life. It's also one of service, generosity, and giving back so that you become a channel for experience. And that, 100% convinced, is the whole point of life, right? Whatever assets I have, whatever I can give back to the stream of life, I need to devote as much of my attention, behavior, and activities towards that end. Hard to come up with an example of somebody who did that more regularly regularly, with more discipline, with more passion and commitment than Fred Rogers.
Yeah, this, as we were just saying, I think we were like, it was a good transition there because we were kind of getting there anyway, which is, I just think this was like a divinely, however you want to see divine, right? This was a divinely led life.
I think history might regard him that way, actually. I do feel that he will be understood as a figure where a case will be made in future generations for a kind of like divine inspiration. That he wound up on TV at all is sort of insane.
It's insane. And we didn't mention this, but he did briefly work in like normal TV production, which is so funny. He was on like Hit Parade or some weird, he did some like backstage stuff, TV in New York before. So clearly like he gathered the ingredients is my point, is like he kind of saw really quickly, okay, we have a troubled world and we have TV. I kind of understand TV. Now I'm going to go get the music and the puppets and put it all together. And here it is. And isn't this what we all like want to find is to wake up one day and feel as if some force has said like, you should do this thing because you have these exact talents and only you can bring this to the world and it will heal the world and people will be talking about it more 25 years after your death than they did when you were alive.
What's funny is that we could sort of unpack that idea all day. I guess the only other piece I would sort of attach to it may be, I think that there is a real principle of present time experience, that for somebody to have this next level EQ and be so like tapped in on his own emotional experience and the emotional experience of others, particularly children, does require a kind of nowness that obviously sort of accompanies this divine inspiration idea, but it's a spiritual principle, in other words, but it's also a sort of like gets at more of the experience rather than legacy, which is why I'm sort of trying to differentiate it as a second argument for wanting this life. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think it's both. He knew, and I would say going back to like even our man in the mirror thing, I think this is another reason why he had so much confidence. I don't know that he saw it as in like, I'm doing this thing. I think people who feel like God or whatever said, do this, and they know they're supposed to be doing it, I think that can give you a kind of confidence that nothing else can. And that then that allowed him to have this pioneering television show, but also shows people the way going forward, how to have a good children's show.
Yeah. He sets a template. Actually, that's an argument number 3.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it gets back to your TV pioneer. Like he sets a standard. Right. And he sets a standard that I think we have struggled to achieve, but it's obviously.
For sure. Like Teletubbies is not.
But at least it's out there, right? I mean, at least that forevermore, we now can say it can be done and it can be done successfully. And I mean, I don't want to get too political on it, but it's certainly a case for public broadcasting funding, among other things, right? And I think a little bit transcends time.
And taking children seriously. And what I mean by that is like plenty of people took children seriously as a commercial force for this, but he took children seriously as people. It's really lovely. And so I think that is like the actual legacy, is taking kids seriously as viewers, like in this intelligent way, not as just like we can sell sugar cereal to them.
I think that we could go on and on. I think that is a great place to end it. So, all right, I'm going to recap the arguments for divine inspiration on some level, and I also sort of amend that with existing in the present in an emotional state. I think you added on there TV pioneer, an opportunity space, and then most importantly, taking children seriously and taking their experience seriously. So with that, James Vanderbeek, I'm Fred Rogers, and you want my life. Okay, speed round here. Plugs for past shows. If you enjoyed this episode, what should our listeners check out?
I can't resist the opportunity to plug the Paul Reubens episode, who is a spiritual heir of sorts, but a lot messier, so a lot more drama. I loved that episode. It made me think about Paul Reubens again and gave me a real perspective. So that's a great example of what you guys do, which is that it kind of like doing the entire arc and including kind of the rethinking redemption of him in his death, where now I think we all agree like the sordid stuff was not that important and that he was wonderful.
Episode 90, Big Adventurer Paul Reubens, a.k.a. Pee-wee Herman. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit out of the box here. I'm going to go with episode 40, Eavesdropper, Dick Clark. The common denominator I see is that Dick Clark was somebody who, for whatever else you make of him, he saw teenagers. He saw adolescents. He had a way of seeing the inner life of a particular stage of life, the same way that I think Fred Rogers had a talent for seeing a particular stage of life. So, episode 40, Eavesdropper, Dick Clark. Here's a little teaser for the next episode of Famous and Gravy. She started teaching herself to play the piano before she was 10, picking up songs from the radio.
Doris Day?
Not Doris Day. Famous and Gravy listeners, we love hearing from you. If you want to reach out with a comment, question, or to participate in our opening quiz, email us at hello@famousandgravy.com. In our show notes, we include all kinds of links, including to our website and our social channels. Famous and Gravy is created and co-hosted by Amit Kapoor and me, Michael Osborne. Thank you so much to Jennifer Keishin Armstrong for helping out with this episode. It was produced by Allie Arrazola with assistance from Jacob Weiss. Original music by Kevin Strang. Thanks. See you next time. Follow Famous and Gravy on the Wondery app. You can listen to more episodes early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Before you go, tell us about yourself by completing a short survey at Wondery.com/survey.